Hey folks, this is Drew with the Building Great Experiences podcast. I'm really excited today to talk about experiential design with my friend here, Lauren Kerwell. Lauren and I worked together close to a decade ago at Red Ventures and have stayed in touch. She's done some amazing things. Super excited to have her on the show. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a second. One thing I wanted to tell a quick story on was Lauren and I got coffee recently and we had a really great jam session on thinking about how you design great experiences, but in a physical space. And so that's really going to be what we're talking about. But Lauren, thanks for coming on.
Love it. Love it. And thanks for the invite, Drew. First podcast ever. So excited to be here. A little bit about me. Let's see. Lauren Kerwell, creative director, product designer. I haven't quite made the leap yet to not being able to keep my hands in the stuff. Started out an agency. I've been doing this for about 20 years. So that's been super, super fun to see both the evolution of design and the evolution of myself. Currently working at RVO Health joint venture, also kind of keeping my feelers out. I did some contract work, IC, that really reinvigorated something for me. So I'm keeping my ear to the ground. But yeah, one of the things I did want to talk about in my background, my agency world, I think this where my love for experiential design really comes from. First agency I worked for, Drew, was called iStrategy Labs, and we did online and offline digital, like kind of bridging the gap on digital experiences. And so, this is the world of Facebook games we're talking about longer than a decade ago. So you'd log on Facebook, you'd vie for like control of this literal baseball launcher that we had hooked up. You could shoot this thing at this warehouse stage that we had created. So it was the epitome of a physical space that people are getting to experience now digitally and live, which at the time was like really unheard of. So I think that really sparked my love for the design of kind of those experiences and those spaces. And yeah, I think I do a lot of that now in my my festival going. Big festival goer, love EDM space. I know we share a little bit of that. I also have a little personal thing going, making some Squishmallow necklaces. So that's my jam right now.
Yeah, I love the story. I think what would be great to start with is just, defining what is experiential design. Like you gave a couple really great examples, but like, what is it? Maybe how does it differ from other forms of design? And then why does it matter? Like, why should people invest in it?
Yeah. What is experience design? I spent a few minutes thinking about this one. What isn't experience design, right? Like as humans, what in our existence do we not experience, right? Like the collection of experiences is our reality. So that's a little abstract there. But to go, I guess, maybe a click deeper into it, experience design is really talking about how can we influence emotion, and essentially allow people the opportunity to write a new memory, to make something so unique. Maybe it's pinpointing on nostalgia. Maybe it's an element of surprise, but what can be introduced here to create that memory for somebody that keeps that experience in their mind? And then I think there's something that, maybe folks coming to your podcast would more expect of the experience of those digital, the apps we use, the websites we visit, all of that kind of thing. But I think, recently I have really been more into how we experience things in that physical sense. And then, but maybe how can things like, especially with the growth of AI, how can that lend itself to amplify not just what we're doing digitally, but what we're doing physically in those physical experiences? That gets me really excited.
I think it's like, so a couple things you said, which is really like interesting, is this whole like designing around emotion,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times, especially when you look at like companies with people, they emphasize or fixate on like, how are we going to drive revenue results, ROI, KPIs, whatever, right? They're trying to figure out how to do that. And, science has proven this time and time again, people buy based on emotion, right?
Uh-huh.
And so if you're able to create something that connects with people emotionally, right? Whether it's physical or digital, you're going to be able to drive those results. I think of this like, I use this quote a lot. It's like you focus on the right inputs, the score takes care of itself. And I think that especially businesses that have like physical, they do physical events or have physical space or have physical products, like don't forget how important it is to intentionally curate, design, create this environment where your customer or your employee is coming in and they feel something. They feel, like a spark of curiosity, intrigue, joy, happiness, whatever you want to call it, right? That they now associate to your brand. And they're like, man, that was awesome. I went to this place and had this really cool moment, that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. And they're going to tell everybody they know about it because it's like, they can't help it. I don't know if you've heard this story. There was this, like probably 10 or 15 years ago, there's a speakeasy in, I think, Brooklyn. And I was like, don't ask, don't tell, or something, like some kind of cryptic, name.
Of course.
But anyway, yeah, like, of course, some kind of like, cool, mysterious name. And the way that you got to it, there was no marketing, no website, no branding, no nothing. But you had to go find this like telephone booth, and you like went, and I think you like called, and then they, someone picked up on the other side, and then this door, like false door, opens up, and you go in. There's this whole speakeasy, and it like created this movement in over the last decade where like more and more people doing speakeasies. But the reason why people went was not necessarily because their cocktails were super great or even necessarily the service was super great. It was like the intrigue, the mystery, the emotion that it was evoked, because it was like, oh, wow, that was really cool. Like, and then it became viral, like word of mouth.
Yeah.
Because people wanted to be part of it. Right. It was this like special experience. And so I think like, that to me is, when you think about experiential design, how do you create those moments that people like, they won't forget you. They won't walk away and just be like, meh. Like, I mean, think about how many times you go to like a retail store and you leave and you're probably never ever going to go back, and you probably never ever remember to think of it again. Right. But the ones where you go and you're like, that was really cool. Like I'm definitely going back there. I'm going to tell everybody I know about it. Like, that's experiential design in my mind. It's that customer walking out and being like, I've got to come back here. I've got to tell people about this. It's like so memorable, so distinct that they can't help but remember it,
Right. Yeah. That uniqueness like sinks itself in. It's like hooks, right? Yeah. I think of thank you for that. That is all super relevant. Like, I think where that brings me is going to the music festival aspect of this, right? And I think about when I go to a music festival, I'm bringing so much. I'm bringing the vibes, as they say. So, I've got furry blankets, pillows, lights, the whole 9 yards. And so first of all, the experience of setting that up, and not just setting that up solo, but setting it up with your crew. So the actual creation of, and I thought about this setting up, getting ready for this conversation, that experience of how you show up as a human and what you bring to the table, your energy, your curiosity, your passion, that is all part of an experience that you create, right, around you. So I think about that when I come to these festivals. I bring all this with me, and folks are like, it's almost like, I imagine like Miss Frizzle's like magic school bus, right? You're like pulling these things out. These guys have never seen it before, right? We're like planning out where we're going to set this up in the camp. We've got to be logical. We have a kitchen space. We've got a lot of people to feed. Of course, we're making our own food there. But then also thinking about, okay, we need to save space for a dance floor. But what's going to be above the dance floor? Where are we going to put these lights? Does anybody have a ladder to climb up these trees and hang these things up? So that's one thing, the actual crafting of the experience, which I think is something that can bring a lot of pride, like that. Just to say you did the thing, right? That's super cool. But now fast forwarding to when the music actually starts to happen and people are starting to walk around and seeing strangers' faces as they come upon our camp and see all the different artwork. Because, my friends we're all just a bunch of weirdos, right? So we're doing art on like thrift store canvases, covering up books and bringing that, hang it up with lights and things that people are coming in, and that all on their faces when they walk in and they see all this work, all this passion. But then there are the moments that really, really connect. And so this is something where like somebody will walk in with a specific costume And so I have a Squishmallow necklace that like reflects their costume super well. So the moment where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to lose out on this sale, but this person, this like matches them so perfectly. And that moment of gifting that to them, like that is a moment that they're never going to forget. And so when you ask the question, what makes it so you will never forget this experience? I think it is about being seen and feeling seen, feeling noticed, feeling like there is something there that is like for you. And so I think about different, I've been a few like UX conferences, and I think the workshops that I remember were they did such a good job focusing on your project and the context around it and why it mattered to you. Like, I think that's something that really connects to people that, okay, you either know something about my culture, something about my demographic, something about this, audience that I associate with you, and you took the time to kind of intentionally know something that would be nostalgic or that would be a surprise or that would be delightful, like this little jack-o'-lantern right there in the corner. So delightful, right?
Very delightful.
Yeah. So it's like, I think it really has to do with making that connection to that human experience, and like, what is something that almost triggers that delight for you.
Yeah. I think I'll make a couple of connections here. So
All
like,
right.
I think your metaphor of like the festival is like really spot on, because for those who haven't been to a festival, people who put on really great music events or festivals or concerts, they've like carefully selected each piece of material, furniture, light, and the ones that are doing really well, they're designing it as this, like, you are immersing yourself in this new world, right? Like, there's this really great one called Electric Forest, and it's like up in Michigan or something like that. And the whole forest is like transformed into this kind of mystical place.
Sherwood Forest.
And yeah, exactly. And so if you kind of take that and you think about it in the context of like more quote unquote traditional businesses,
Yeah.
you don't have to have a mystical forest to create a great experience. You can say, all right, like, I'm going to this store, and like, if you're the business leader who's involved in designing that store experience, you've got to think about like, where are people walking? What are we doing to create those memorable moments? What are those things? I love what you said, which kind of ties to this like personalization piece, like see and be seen. If you're able to personalize things to where people feel like they're seen and they're not just a number, they're not just, I'm a customer number, 50,222. I'm like Drew, and these are the things that I care about. And you can demonstrate that through both physical objects, but like digital touch points and channels. And then your guests or, your staff are actually engaging with a customer in a way that demonstrates care and that they are seen. It's not just like a transactional thing, right? I think that's what's hard with experiential design is it kind of spans across all of these different things that a customer is going to interact with. I mean, like a really weird one would be if you're familiar with like concept of scent marketing, right? A lot of brands will have they actually pump a certain smell or scent into a space so that because it's science shows your sense of smell is most closely connected to memory. So there's a whole businesses that are built around designing a scent that's tailored to your brand so that when you buy that product, you now associate that with like new and cool and exciting, right?
And now they even make systems that you can put in your, like scent systems that you can put home, really great for rental properties, right? But yeah, you can warm sugar cookies when you
right.
check in, talk about 5 experience, right?
Yeah. It's a good segue because there's this really great framework that I think Airbnb penned. Brian Chesky is the CEO. He created it sometime in the last decade, and it's this like 11-star system or whatever. And basically, like his whole thought process is, okay, like, what is it? Let's say that you're just to make it simple, like you're a retail store, and maybe like it's like, okay, what's a 1-star experience at a retail store? I'm like, oh, I go and like people throw products at me and I'm trying to pay and they steal my money, right? Or something, right? Maybe that's a 1-star. Okay, well, what's a 3-star? 3-star is like, I go, I find the product. They're not super helpful in helping me find it.
Yeah.
You're right. That I go, I pay, and I leave, and like they maybe didn't give me my exact change or something like that, right? 5-star is I go, I find the product, they help me find it, they give me some insight, I'm able to pay seamlessly, maybe it's a cashless or whatever, and I leave, and it was good. So then you're like, okay, like that's your 5 scale. Well, now let's go like a little bit crazier. What's a 7-star? What's a
Oh,
9-star? And they start to get to these things where it's
oh,
like, one of the I think the examples I've seen is, you know, you're going and like, I don't know, Jeff Bezos like personally delivers a product to your like house and like builds a mansion, like crazy, crazy stuff.
yeah.
But like the exercise, the reason why he does this is it challenges you to stretch your thinking from just your standard like
Yeah.
5-star experiences. We delivered on the promise and we gave the customer exactly what they expected in a timely manner, and more of this like, what are those extra things you can do that break the bounds of like what's normal
Yeah.
and start to make it more of this innovative, creative, personalized experience that people are like, whoa, that was really, really cool. Because, probably no business is going to do an 11-star experience or whatever. Probably not even like a 7 or an 8. But what is it what's the extra touches you can glean from those ideas to incorporate into your current experience, and that just make it that much more memorable for the customer and helps them feel seen by, your employees, by your business, by your brand.
Absolutely. And I feel like what that is really doing, it's opening the door for imagination, right? It's opening the door for further imagination. And I think too, what it allows us to do is introduce empathy, right? What would I be delighted on? Me,
Yep.
Lauren, if I came to an Airbnb, and then it allows people to put that on the table. And I think it's, you know, the world that we live in is so built for a specific person, to look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way. And I think when you open that door to imagining what is this 6-star experience, but not only that, but what is a 5-star experience for you versus me versus you, we probably have much different, or I'd say even slightly different expectations of that. So then to
Yep.
then expand that to like, now we're talking about that's not really done yet. And
Yep.
now you get to say your 6, 7, 8, I say my 6, 7, 8, and the pool of opportunity just opens so much. And then it's like you can kind of like give and take off of, one person's, because experiences are so driven by our context, right? So if I'm somebody traveling with kids, my 5-star experience or 7-star experience revolves around like toys and activities for them to do, I would imagine. It's keeping them occupied, right? Or things that we can do as a family, maybe some Lego kits or something. And then think about how that context also changes what that 5, 7, 11-star experience means. But something that you talked about that I thought was so interesting that I think you hit it, like transactional. You said the word transactional, and I caught on to it. I think that when you are introducing that transaction, and it's like the more a transaction is in your face, right, the less authentic it feels. And I'm thinking about like an experience I went through at Lost Lands Music Festival, this hidden secret neon garden thing. You come up to this pond and you've got these beautiful lily pad people dancing around it, and they say to reach your arm in the pond and pull out your gift. And you're like, okay, is this going to be a trick? Is this going to be, something great? So, I had the faith. I reach in and all the way to the bottom too. And I mean, we're talking, this is up to my shoulder. And I pull out I think this was 2022. I pull out the 2022 commemorative Lost Lands pin, which the only way you could get it was to go through this like experience. And I think that just the moment of like, okay, are you tricking me? Because like that's kind of getting something for you, but no, it's actually a gift like that. Yeah, that's a moment I'll never forget because it didn't feel transactional. It was like, we're so grateful that you're here. we're so proud that you like discovered this thing, and here is your reward. Like enjoy the ambiance and grab your pin. It was so cool.
Yeah.
I
I
think
feel like that,
no, go ahead.
I was going to say that story is pretty on point because my suspicion, and I don't know if it's true, but my suspicion is probably, even though they gave you that gift of a pin and it was this like cool moment, you probably went and bought a bunch more merch because you were that much more stoked about Lost Lands. And you probably have told this story to like a dozen people, right? Who are now going to potentially go. And so it's like, I think that's where businesses like,
Yeah.
they think too transactionally in the short term, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, if we give away this pin, the pin costs us $6. And if we're giving away 100,000 of them, we just gave away $600,000. I'm making up the numbers, but
Yeah.
you know, they're fixated on that rather than saying, this is a $6 investment we're making into increasing our, you know, brand equity, and we're increasing customer lifetime value. And now like Lauren's a lifelong fan and is telling everybody she knows about Lost Lands and is buying the merch and supporting the brand. And like, it's like that. It's like, I think right now in 2024, too many brands are overly fixating on like the costs of things and the short term, like we got to make a buck.
Yeah.
And the ones that, in my opinion, the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that are saying, we're going to make the long-term bet that's going to pay dividends in the long run by making those moments with the customer where they're not like, they don't feel like they're just a transaction. They feel like, wow, this is a real human moment, you know, that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And now I'm a lifelong, you know, customer.
Yeah. No, I wanted to get into this a little bit with you. I wanted to see your opinions here because I totally agree with you. Now here in 2024, companies are pulling back, right? The economy sucks. Well, you know, we've got this double-edged sword, right? The economy sucks. We're feeling it. Prices are rising, et cetera, et cetera. But then also we're hearing about record profits in some areas, right? But anyway, regardless of that, I think it's so interesting. How are you feeling right now in this space where it's like companies are, they're tightening their belts and they're not, you know, the value of these things that is not a direct value, the events, the experiences, things like that, you know, those are really cutting back. Even research for the new digital experiences. So not even bringing it back to the digital, which one could argue is like an easier experience to deliver in this day and age. How are you feeling? Yeah.
I think, I mean, the long and short of it is, definitely people today are prioritizing it less than they once were.
Yeah.
I think a couple years back, there was a shift towards experience, innovation, like let's do things for the long term. And then obviously the pendulum has kind of come back over here. But sort of the thought process that I have is like, what goes up must go down, right? Or what goes down must go up. Like there's sort of that, you've got the pendulum keeps going back and forth, and business leaders are, maybe I'm an optimist, but I think that, you know, if you look at right now, like there's a lot of fear in the system, right? People are afraid of what does AI mean for the business? Like, you know, what's going to happen? There's an election year. And so people are sort of just waiting to see what plays out. And I've seen this. There's a lot of leaders that I've been working with and talking to, the ones that are like getting out front and they're saying, we're going to make bets right now for the long term. We're going to make, you know, decisions that
we can see ahead, the ominous cloud that everybody is in right now. Yeah.
Yep. Because I think, I mean, here's the thing. This is my opinion. At some point, the market will correct. It always does. And at some point, all of the sea of sameness where everyone's doing the exact same thing in the exact same way, they're, you know, all the messaging is created by AI. It all just feels generic and bland. The businesses that are going to be successful are the ones that look, act, and function differently and have a better experience for customers, a differentiated experience for customers that's memorable. Those businesses are going to thrive, right? And I think if you look at throughout time, like look back in history, you know, the organizations that have stood the test of time are the ones that they understand that customer at the center, prioritizing the customer, prioritizing their experience, prioritizing creating value for them, they win, you know, and the ones that lose, they lose the, you know, the script, so to speak, like they forget that thing, and they start to be too focused on, oh, we got to figure out how to make our, stock price go up next quarter. We got to figure out how to, cut costs by, I just got a text today from a friend of mine who's a head of design, and the whole department got axed like yesterday. And, that keeps happening. But
Yeah.
I think that people like that, like the people who understand the value of investing in customer experience,
Yeah.
frankly, are the ones that they're going to be successful. It's just we're in that kind of weird down point as an industry. And I tend to be the optimist. I think it's going to come back around. And I think, there's plenty of experience opportunities out there if you look for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think you make a great point around there is going to be a lot of sameness, especially in the world of AI and leveraging AI instead, in place of a human. And that's where, the sameness and the genericness is really going to start to blend. And so that even gets me thinking of how can, so interesting. How can these digital companies make that moment of memorability and experience? And what does that look like coming into the future? And what does that level of customer service? I think we're seeing, the generation coming up is a little bit more demanding on what their experience accommodates, which is really fascinating to see, and kind of like that demand of how we create the experiences, right? How we do work and what that experience is. But also what we're, denoting our skills to, and what we are being paid to build. Yeah, interesting time just seeing. And it seems like there is that, it's almost like a panic mode, a panic button that gets hit. And there's kind of like a detachment from the human, and the obsession shifts to the numbers, which I think, to the detriment of us all. But what's really fascinating is even one company nailing their customer experience. The tech world is just so overrun with copycat, people seeing something, copying it. Oh, they just released this feature, we have to get it out. And that's just what works for one company and their audience. And kind of to go back to the being seen thing, what makes that audience feel seen is not what makes another audience feel seen. And so this world of just copycat, AI, generic, you're good. You're definitely, I agree with you there. You're definitely going to see people rise to the top, and it's going to be the people that are, even in the times of a down tick, they're still, they know that the people are true to their cause, and like they're that, staying alive essentially.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk a little bit about who's doing this well, because I think like we kind of covered a lot of ground on people not prioritizing it and the market being down, but I think there's still a lot of organizations and businesses that are they are investing in this. They are focusing on the experience, and I think they're winning. I don't know if you've got a couple that come to mind, and then also just maybe specifically what they're doing that you're watching.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think we've talked a lot about music festivals here, so I'm gonna bring it there. And I think about the, music festivals started. I mean, we're going into probably like 2 decades. I mean, very underground at the beginning, right? And I mean, obviously more than 2 decades, but regardless, coming into mainstream. And the fact that is, I mean, the crowds today that you bring in. I mean, Electric Forest that you mentioned earlier, that sells out in minutes. Thousands of tickets in minutes. You literally have to be part of the lottery to be a new person going, right? But when you think about the why, why is there this huge comeuppance of folks wanting to go to these things, to have these camping experiences, and that, like, I think they're finding less of it, right? I think general people, I think there were always the sensory seekers, right? And those are your people that have been in the EDM scene probably for a while. But then, there is this other aspect of adventure and curiosity that brings folks that might not even be in love with the music that's playing, but like are really curious about, like, what is this essentially adult Disney, right? What is this experience that's crafted for me and what I love? And so I just kind of connect that to the huge surge in just the amount of music festivals that are being put on, the amount of people going to them. and how much more mainstream they are. I think people are missing something in their brand experiences and in their day-to-day digital experiences that they're just like, and I don't know if they could even put their finger on it, right? But I think folks are missing that experience of feeling seen and feeling like something is crafted for them. So who's doing it well? Jeff, producer of Excision, he's definitely doing it well. I mean, I think Insomniac is another big music festival company. They do like Electric Daisy Carnival, EDC Vegas. You know, there are definitely shortcomings of us all, but I think in general, they're also creating spaces that, you know, we want to be safe, we want to be respectful, but also have fun, be seen, be weird, see really crazy lasers and fire pyrotechnics and all that kind of stuff. Some of the new drone fireworks stuff has been freaking insane. But yeah, so I think, and I think companies are seeing that rise of folks like seeking that kind of experience. So I think they're doing it really well. But to bring it back to the digital, Drew, I mean, I hate to say it, I was like, man, I have to come up with something different. But Airbnb still just rocking it. Just went up to a cabin this weekend. I would say just that they continue to evolve, right? Airbnb didn't settle for like, okay, this is now like we're above and beyond what anybody's doing. It's like they didn't stop there. So we're using like the people's guides, completely seamless check-in, really fast messaging. Like, now Airbnb does this cool thing where everybody you add to your trip, it creates like a little slideshow for them. It created a little like Gatlinburg cover for me. And that's, coming back to feeling seen and feeling special, right? Oh, now when I send this link to all my friends, it's got this cool, it looks like I created a little reel for us. And that did all that work for me. Makes me look awesome.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love those examples. You said something, I want to like hit on a couple of pieces.
Okay.
So like we've talked a lot about festivals and events. And I think that there's like a lot of really good lessons for, other industries to glean from the event production industry, from the gaming industry, from, the conference industry. Because a lot of those industries for quite a while now have been creating these like really interesting, intriguing, memories where, and they're kind of like trying to one up each other, right? So for example, like we've used festivals, like the festivals are always trying to come up with a more creative and innovative way to kind of keep people to come and have this wonderful, adventure. Similarly, conferences, right? Every time I go to a conference, there's always some new way that they're engaging. There's some new creative, connective, I'm sure you've seen these, like, I remember we went to a conference 10 years ago and there was like a graffiti wall. And I remember at the time it was like groundbreaking, like, whoa, graffiti wall. And like you can put stuff on there. And now it's like everybody has it, right? And I've seen puzzle walls and I've seen like AR experiences that you can go and you can like put on a Oculus and do stuff, right? At festivals, they'll have it, they roll in like an 18-wheeler and it turns into like a pop-up shop, right?
Do you remember the UX carnival that they set up?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Like stuff. But I think like so if you take those more like forward thinking, innovative, creative industries, I think there's like some really good lessons that people can take and apply to some of the more like, I'll call it like traditional or boring industries. For example, like last year was working with a regional bank and they were asking us like, what does the, community branch of the future look like? And we took inspiration from coffee shops and the Apple Store and like these, these physical events, these like conferences and things. And we used that to craft this experience narrative as like, here's what we think that this will look like in the future. And it was much more anchoring to community, right? Because for them, they're going up against the big banks. And the thing that separates them from the big banks is not necessarily that they have more capabilities or more technology or whatever. It's that the community aspect, right? And so we were saying like, how can we remove physical and digital barriers to that relationship that you're building with a banker? And we were like, let's create this more like pop-up bank branch idea and then create this more casual coffee shop kind of a bank branch that you could come and grab a coffee and sit and chat with your banker and get insight and things like that. The other one I was thinking about is like healthcare. Healthcare is ripe for like complete transformation. It's such a people just expect it's like, oh, it's going to suck. It's like the way the thing is, it's not going to get any better. But like a recent example, a friend of mine, he runs an organization that does battery kiosks. So you can go and you get like mobile charging, and they've started to put these kiosks in operating room or, emergency rooms, operating rooms, waiting rooms. And so, it seems small, but it's like, there's now an experience. Like when you go to the waiting room in the hospital, right? It's like, there's coffee, there's battery charging, there's, these more engaging things versus just a standard stale meh, which in healthcare, if you think about that industry in particular, like that's one of the most like potentially hard moments in someone's life, right? Like something with their health might be going wrong. And like, how can you make that experience better, right? Like, how can you decrease the stress, the anxiety, the fear by introducing some of these elements that from these other industries, right? Like these more innovative industries, you can take some of those things and apply them, there. So anyway, those are the things that come to my mind in terms of, I think there's industries that are doing it better than others, and those other industries could take a page out of that book.
Yeah. I love that you said healthcare too. I think that is just like, it's such a left behind kind of industry to think to, evolve in person. And I mean, I think some things are catching up digitally. We can see our labs online now kind of easily.
Yeah, finally.
But yeah, like the thought of, you've brought, maybe it's not even you that's waiting for the ER, but you've brought a friend who's in the ER, and right, you just need a hot cup of tea to calm your nervous system down, or a soft pillow to have on your lap and to hug to calm your nervous system down, right? And it's like, that's a really great point to be, and it all comes back to that intentionality and being seen, right? What is the moment? What is your context? And how can you be served? Yeah, I think we mentioned this in our coffee chat, but for me, it really kind of starts to blend the line experiential design and service design, especially, when we're talking about these physical events and things.
Yeah, I think for those who are listening who maybe don't know what service design is, the kind of short, sweet version is you're intentionally designing the service experience, right? So when people are physically going into your space or interacting with, a service, like what is that experience and how do you make sure that every single part of that journey is thought through? Completely agree. Like you can't like it. I think sometimes, especially those of us who like do this work, like we get tripped up on all the vernacular and stuff, and I've used this metaphor before and I've like written on it and stuff, but I talk about like altitudes of experience. Like it's all experience, but it's like, what altitude are you flying at? So like, in my opinion, there's 4 primary altitudes. So there's products, which is kind of the lowest level, and that could be physical or digital. Then there's service, which is cutting across all the different touch points a brand has with a customer. Then there's like brands. So the brand experience is kind of the culmination of all, digital, physical, product and service things that you're interacting with your customer on. That's like from they're talking to a salesperson, they're talking to a marketing person, or they're seeing marketing messages and paid advertising, to like they're trying to sign into your app and the app's not working. Like all of that is brand, culminates in brand experience. And then the last level, the highest level experience altitude that I believe there is I call it ecosystem, which is basically cross brands, right? So you're like, we keep using the festival example. So like, if you're at a festival, it's an ecosystem in a way, because you've got different vendors who are all their own entities, their own businesses. You've got the actual different types of guests. So you've got like the people who are more VIP, and you've got the other like general admission. You have the staff, you have the talent, right? The musicians and the producers and stuff. You have like the performers, you have all these different people and these different organizations. And it's like kind of a microcosm of an ecosystem that you have to you have to not think about like, if let's say I'm a vendor, and for those, actually, I'll share a little side story. For those who don't know, I used to run a clothing brand and I would go and sell products at festivals, and I would perfect the experience in my booth and make sure that it was phenomenal. But here's the thing. If I was at a festival, like, the festival experience affected my customer's experience, regardless of how much control and thing I would do in my space. Like, it could, make or break if the festival wasn't good, right? The
Mhm.
customer's having they don't like it. It's hot outside. There's not enough water. So then they come into my space and they're not interested in buying anything and they're pissed off, right? So that ecosystem experience is like the most macro altitude that you can get to, and it encompasses all of these things. And so anyway, all that to say, like, I think that when we talk about experience, like, throw away all the buzzwords and terms, and it's like, what altitude are you flying at? And those altitudes aren't like a perfect, it's not like sedimentary rock where it's like it's hard lines and stone. It's like you're in air, and so you might
Yeah.
cross into a higher altitude, but you're still kind of like you're in that ecosystem brand area, right? Or you might zoom down and you're like, now you're in that product or service area, right?
Right.
And so you have to, I think people sometimes, I've had these conversations where people get really tripped up on the words and they get tripped up on the, like, well, in this, we need to create these things because of this, whatever. And you're like, no, stop. Like, what altitude are we flying at? Or what altitude are we designing at intentionally? And is it at that more macro level? Or is it at a more like, 5,000 feet? What's the digital thing going to be? And I think the folks who do it really well, they're able to fly up and down in those altitudes, and they can keep in mind, okay, if I make these changes at the lower level on the product, but I don't make changes up here at the macro level, these little changes don't actually matter because we missed this part. We missed the part that's like up at the macro.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
And I think that causes things to feel inauthentic then when
yeah,
you get to it, when you get
yeah,
down to it. Yeah, I think about story to add there on just exactly what you said, right? Okay, so was working with a brand called Thought for Food, was a Syngenta sub brand. They were hosting a space it was a conference in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania called One Young World. Big conference where kids, it was late high school and early college age folks from all over the world. So essentially, it was this huge thing where folks were trying to figure out, how to solve a few different like world kind of crises, like the food waste, getting food to those who are hungry, things like that. But so we're in this event space, and Thought for Food to me is such a different mission, right? It's about a lot of the brands were just like, a lot of the folks there were representing their brands and things like that. But this was a challenge. We were trying to like incite excitement for the challenge, for people to sign up, get people sharing things too on social, just garner awareness. And so I sat back and thought about like, all right, you're in this big, sterile conference space, bunch of concrete. We're talking about, the earth and the future of the earth. What is going to make this stand out? I have like a 20 by 40 spot of space. And I was like, well, it would be really cool if we could bring the outside in. So I contacted a local arbory, got 10 trees, and these are like 20-foot trees that they're shipping in and like bringing in forklifts to this warehouse space while everybody else is setting up with their little folding tables and their banners. So we like put the AstroTurf down, fluff it up. We get the trees, my agency was baller. We designed this like pro tip. If you're ever designing for an event space and need cheap but big impact, cardboard boxes. We got white cardboard boxes, printed a different pattern on every side, and then stacked them up essentially to create kind of like a wall. This was also the era of the social machines that I talked about at the beginning of this podcast. So we had this Thought for Food vending machine that had I got to do the wrap for that. That was super cool. And also I had to design like little capsules. So they were like little capsules people would tweet at Thought for Food challenge. And then the vending machine would dispense. It was either some kind of like fact about the world, or you got like, we had the grand prize, I think was an iPad, but we had like t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. So that brought a lot of energy and engagement. But I was also like, all right, these folks, they're going to be overwhelmed, right? Going to be so much information overload. These are like college age kids. They're getting information from all freaking over. So what can I do? What can I do for them? What can I do to meet them where they are? And so I was like, all right, we bought this. I got this like little picnic table. We painted it bright teal because that was like doing the brand for Thought for Food was really cool. I think we did neon green, kind of like my hair. It's a neon blue. It was definitely that era design. So anyway, we got this bright ass table. I'm like, well, what is just fun? What is just fun, low risk? So I get Play-Doh. We have like a big moleskin, one of the big floppy journals and like markers. So we just throw a prompt in there. What does your future world look like with some of these problems solved? And the amount of folks that came in, and you could almost like see them like relax too when they came into the space. Just feels, it feels like you're not so much in nature, but getting close. And folks just sat down at the picnic table, chilled, had conversations with us about what we were doing, and played with the Play-Doh, played with the little Lego set, took pictures of it, and it was great. It was great, right? In that moment, I would not have thought to introduce that, because Legos and Play-Doh have nothing to do with Thought for Food in the world hunger crisis. But it was that moment of knowing these folks would be overwhelmed, knowing they would probably have been walking around all day looking at knowing that they would probably want a freaking break. And what better opportunity for your brand than to bring that while also educating and having a cool space to relax in.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example. It reminds me a lot of, you and I went to Adobe Max in 2016, and like they had the big like Airstreams, right? There was like that Airstream, and they like you could go in the Airstream and hang out, and they had like couches and stuff outside. It looked like, to your point, like outside, inside. I honestly feel like a lot of people who design events and put on these big conferences, like companies should take a page out of that book. Like I worked with a lot of folks who part of their sales motion is going to trade shows, and the level of creativity and innovation that they're bringing to those trade shows is like through the roof. Then back at home, like there's people who do like through the roof, in terms of like trade show experience. But then back at home, it's like the most bland, generic, and I'm like, do that over here. Like do the same, bring that same thought and care and intentionality through everything you're doing, not just when you're like, oh, we got this big trade show, let's make this really cool space. And we're like, what about your actual physical store, like your physical space? Or like, what about, how you're engaging with your customers digitally? Like what if you brought that same passion and creativity over here? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think something that helps, you mentioned storytelling earlier in the call. I think Donald Miller is the one that I follow, the storytelling framework. And the whole impetus of that is your brand. That's not the star of the show. That ain't the hero. The customer is the hero. And your brand is like the little Yoda, the sidekick, helping the human accomplish whatever they need to do. So in that sense, if we can flip the script and keep framing it where we are these experiences, these products, they are for the end human, that's where really, you bring it back around. And you can think of things like a colorful picnic table and Play-Doh, even though you're talking about the food crisis, because you're meeting the people where they are. The customer is the hero, and the customer needs to be relaxed and nourished. And if we would take just a second. And think about the opportunity now. I'm so surprised that, they talk about the economy of catastrophe, but I am surprised at I think I expected much more experiences around reconnecting coming out of COVID. and recreating that community. And I think I'm really surprised at, it feels like there maybe was a lack of, and maybe that is because, like we talked about earlier, companies are so focused on the numbers right now. And so they're not really thinking about how there's this great opportunity to create a community around a brand and get people connected and to make them feel something they haven't felt in, going on 4 years now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren, phenomenal conversation as always. You are one of the most interesting creative humans I've ever met, and I love the thinking around helping people be seen. I think that's a really important nugget to take forward. Where can folks find you online?
Well, I creep around here and there. I have squishdripville.etsy.com. That's my little, if you're into squishmallows, I may put them on little necklaces. They're joy. They're very comforting. Also, the kids love them. I customize them. I've got my design works out there. Go to my LinkedIn, Lauren Kerwell. I think I'm on an Adobe portfolio right now. It's a rough world. We do what we can.
Yeah, my portfolio hasn't been touched in I don't know how long.
Yeah, it's like we have so many jobs as designers, right? And that is just one that falls low on my prio list. Yeah. I realize much more a connection human. So thank you, Drew. I appreciate this opportunity. Like I said, first podcast. Thank you for the kind words. I feel good. I think we nailed it.
Lauren, thanks again for being on the show. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Drew. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye, buddy.
Hey there. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you could take a second, hit the subscribe button below. It would really mean the world. I'm trying to make some great content for you every week by interviewing folks and hearing what they have to say about building great experiences. I try to share tips and tricks and things like that. Anyways, take a second, hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.